we talk about this all the time because when you're walking into training camp, obviously as a competitor, everybody thinks we win in the Super Bowl. No. It's only a select few teams that can walk into this building and report and say, "What up, everybody?" and look around that locker room and look left and right and say, "Oh, yeah, we got a chance." And the Jets is one of those teams. There's only about 8 to 10 teams that really possibly has a chance to really host in that Lombardi Trophy and get into that game. The Jets are one of them teams. You look around that locker room on the defensive side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball, the additions that they made. If this team stays healthy, they're going to be a really good football team.
So I always say there's 8 max and 3 close. So here's my Super Bowl bubble. My feeling is there's 8 teams that can win it, and then there's 3 that need things to go their way. And the 3 teams I think are close but need things to go their way are Houston, Cincinnati, Burrow's Health, and the Jets. I think the Jets O-line, they got a bunch of new faces.
You think Houston needs stuff to go right?
Boy, they're young. So my teams that I think should be favored. I think the AFC is better at the top.
Well, you got the Rams inside that circle.
Oh, I think he thinks I'm crazy.
I do too. You have the Rams inside that circle. Now, I would put the Rams on the bubble, but I will put the Texans in there. So I don't know how you stop the Texans. I really don't. You got Tank Dell, who is going to be a baller. You already got a number 1 receiver in Diggs. You have a number 1B in Nico Collins. You have a really good tight end. And then you bring Joe Mixon, who can run and catch the ball out of the backfield on top of what you did on the defensive side of the ball. To be honest with you, everybody's saying, can CJ take the next step? If CJ's just the same, if he's just the same with this roster and what they have on offense and defense, they might beat Baltimore. They might beat Baltimore in that game if he's just the same. And we're not saying he's just going to be the same. He's going to get better. I really don't know how people stop Houston consistently. I'm not saying they're going undefeated, but I don't know how you stop them boys. They got too much over there. So I would put them in there, take the Rams out of there. You know what I'm saying? Was my Packers on there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you are smart.
Now look at.
Oh, yeah. We should be in the circle. We should be where the Niners are, though, like right in the middle, so we could, see.
All right. All right.
Okay. So there's a few things that I want to talk about with this, both the bubble and as well as what James Jones was saying. Because I talk about this a lot about, what's considered to be a good season versus not, right? And the whole idea of Super Bowl or bust and what we actually even mean by bust and all of that. And for me, this is what he kind of said. He was essentially saying that only so many teams actually have a legitimate chance at winning a Super Bowl. And if you play good that season and you actually get far, you make it to the playoffs, and maybe you just get beat by a team that happened to be better than you or just showed up better that game, you can say that was a good season, that was actually a good season. You can't just judge your success whether or not you end up winning the Super Bowl or not. So even when I say Super Bowl or bust, it's like you just have to show that you were capable of winning that Super Bowl and that you actually kind of got pretty far. NFC Championship game, the Super Bowl itself, whatever it may be. But if you actually have a legitimate chance at winning a Super Bowl and then you get rocked in the NFC Championship game, divisional round, whatever it may be, that now kind of is to me what the bust is, where you're just like, well, now I'm not happy with that because we were clearly a Super Bowl capable team and we just underperformed significantly. We just dropped it. Again, unless you're playing a team that's just clearly better than you. And that's why sometimes it feels better to get beaten in the playoffs by the team that ends up winning the Super Bowl, because you're like, listen, they just had it. They had the health, they had the game plan, they just were able to put it together. That's why it feels worse if you lose, like the Cowboys losing to the Packers. If the Packers ended up winning the Super Bowl, then the Cowboys in hindsight could be like, that was a rough loss and we didn't show up, but like the Packers went on a tear. I mean, look, they beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. It just would hit differently. But the fact that they got rocked and then the Packers then lost to the 49ers, it's like, all right, the Cowboys could have won that game. What are you doing? But now to get kind of focused on the actual bubble itself, it's interesting that Colin has the Texans on the outside of that bubble. I would think that the Texans would be inside it. I understand what he's saying because they're so young, but at the same time, they've already, and I've talked about this before, they've already have legitimate experience, especially the quarterback position, like in the playoffs. They won a game. They were on the road. They lost. They didn't like win on the road, but they lost a game on the road. And it was like that alone is a tremendous amount of experience, right? Like just the experience of the intensity of the moment and the speed of the playoffs. Sanchez was talking about this the other day about how like each level of football gets faster and faster and faster. It's faster at high school. It's faster in college. It's faster in the NFL. Then it's faster in the playoffs. Then it's faster in the Super Bowl. It just keeps getting faster and faster and faster. And they have that experience now. And they already even have some actual veterans like Diggs who have also that experience, even if it wasn't directly with the Texans. Not to mention they're being led by a coach who also has tremendous playoff experience. So I don't think that youth is necessarily such this glaring issue for them, quite honestly. Obviously, I think it would be better if they were a year or two older, more mature, and more experienced. But I think they're in the driver's seat, honestly, and kind of like what James Jones was saying in terms of like who can stop them. It's going to be crazy. But I do like Colin's logic of this idea of some of these teams on the outside, they need something to happen in order for them to win, something to happen in their favor. And I look at it like that, as well as what are some of the teams where bad things can happen, things that don't fall in their favor, can they still win? And to me, the great example of that would be the Kansas City Chiefs this past season, right? They didn't have that offense that they exactly wanted. They were having drop passes, but yet they were still able to win. They had that resilience. The Eagles back in like 2017 or whatever, they had Carson Wentz go down. They were still able to win. I'm trying to think if there's any other more recent example. The Rams, right? OBJ goes down. They were able to be resilient and still kind of come up and win that game. Now, on the other side, you have other teams where if something doesn't go perfectly their way, then they kind of fall out, right? That kind of happened with the 49ers kind of both years in the Super Bowl in a way. I'm trying to think if there's any other team. The Ravens, right? They couldn't establish the run game, and that just completely caused them to collapse. The Bills, right? Like they can't overcome a missed field goal or an incomplete pass at a bad moment in the game. There's just those little things that they weren't able to overcome. So it's funny because I would probably put the Bills in the bubble because I don't see them being as resilient as the Chiefs, as the Lions, as the Eagles, the Packers. Like I would actually probably put the Bills out there. I get why the Jets are there too because they have the fragility of the injury risk, right? That's kind of the biggest problem with them. Same thing with the Bengals with Joe Burrow. It's like, are they going to be healthy? Are they going to be not? But it's funny. Like I would probably put the Bills out. And it's not to say that they don't have a chance. I just don't think that the Bills have that same level of resilience as some of these other teams personally. And I would definitely put the Texans in there because I don't have a reason to doubt them necessarily. And I really see that the Texans and the Packers are on very similar trajectories with very similar levels of youth. So it's just interesting that the Packers are in there, but not the Texans. I'm also high on the Rams. I don't know if they're actually truly in the super bubble or not, but I do wholeheartedly believe in Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. So it's also kind of hard to count them out as well. And then, of course, you got the Lions and the Ravens and the 49ers, and you're not going to go wrong with them at all. And obviously the Chiefs are always going to be, as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's there, you're going to have a Super Bowl bubble. Whether they can win the Super Bowl every year, that remains to be seen. But in terms of the potential, it's going to be hard to ever doubt that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, no matter who they have, that they won't be able to find a way. I'm trying to think if there's any other random teams that's interesting. The Miami Dolphins aren't there. I know a lot of people will not like that. It's also kind of funny because Colin just said in the previous clip, the clip from this same show, that he says that he thinks the Chargers will win 12 games. And it's like, that's interesting. If they win 12 games, I'm pretty sure that's going to get them to the playoffs. And then once they're in the playoffs, you don't believe that Harbaugh and Herbert will be able to like kind of maybe be on that bubble. Like it's kind of interesting that you can think that a team can win 12 games, but not even remotely be on the bubble. It's like, what are we saying? Are we saying that they're just going to be a really good regular season team, or that they'll be able to beat up on maybe some of like the less elite teams, but still ultimately get beaten by, say, the Chiefs or the Bills or the Jets come time playoffs? I don't really know. And then I guess the other team that people will probably like surprised about is the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I feel like a bubble team, I need to feel like even if everything goes their way, they can win. And that's probably why I don't see the Dallas Cowboys on the bubble either, because I think the Texans, just to kind of focus with his bubble team specifically, and I'll even throw in my own bubble team of the Bills, like, I could see them winning, right? Like, if they're able to get past the Kansas City Chiefs in whatever round, like, I can see them winning, truly winning the Super Bowl. It's hard for me to imagine that even if the Dallas Cowboys somehow managed to get past the 49ers, they would then have to get past the Packers, and I don't see it, or the Eagles, or flip it around. They get past the Eagles, they get past the Packers, or they get past both those teams. Then they got to get past the Lions or the 49ers. Like, I just don't see that happening. Or let's say they were able to get out of the NFC, then they got to go beat the Kansas City Chiefs or the Ravens that finally beat up on the Chiefs. I just can't see that happening. So it's like, it makes sense to me why they would not be on that bubble, because they don't have that next gear that even if some of the things fall in their favor, we would have to assume that things are going to have to fall in their favor every single round of the playoffs going into the Super Bowl, right? Even if somehow the Cowboys flipped the script against the Packers last year and they were able to win that game, they did not look like they were on the level of the 49ers. They were not on the level of the Lions. I don't care that game was close. The Lions only consistently got better, and the Lions clearly proved that they belonged, and the 49ers clearly proved that they belonged. The Cowboys did not. The Packers proved they belonged. The Eagles proved that they did not belong. So it's just like, it's just the fact that you can have a team that wins, and that's kind of counter to my point before, I suppose, about Justin Herbert and Harbaugh, that you can have a 12-win team that can win a lot of games, put up big numbers, but it's just clearly not a team that's built to take it to the next level come time playoffs. And it's hard for me to imagine that the Cowboys are in that situation. That's probably the only other team that people would probably take issue with. I don't think people are going to take too much of an issue that the fact that the Falcons aren't there, or maybe the Falcons fans. The same thing with the Jaguars. I feel like probably a lot of Miami Dolphins fans are going to be very upset with that, because they're very high on their team, especially with Tua. So curious to see how you guys all respond to this, and who you think's in the bubble, who's not in the bubble, who's in the bubble but should be like outside the bubble, and what teams that aren't there at all and they should either be in the bubble or on the outside of the bubble. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.